All right, I told Brother Johnny, if that choir doesn't have a new member in it next Sunday, I'm calling somebody from the floor. So y'all can draw straws or play rock, paper, scissors tournament, or whatever you feel like you got to do. We're going to make it work. I mean, I guess we added darting this week. If nothing else, there was some entertainment. But I love little feet running through the church house. That don't bother me one bit, I promise. I'd much rather have that than not have none. And hey, let me ask you this. How they ever going to learn how to act in the choir if they don't ever go up there? I told y'all about that person I knew. They wouldn't take their kids out to eat nowhere until they was at least 3 years old and then expected them to know how to act. It's cute when they're that age, but when they get older, it ain't cute no more. So some of y'all are past the age of cute, so if you get in the choir, don't be acting like that. But if that's what it takes to get you up here, we'll see. We'll see. Y'all go to the book of Genesis. I'm going to go to Matthew. I'm going to read you a verse or two there, and I'm going to jump to Genesis. So keep y'all from having to do a lot of jumping back and forth. I'll just cut one of them out for you, and I'll just give it to you this morning. And we'll continue as we preach through the book of Matthew here, and we'll see what the Lord will do with it this morning. As He has shown me some things, He's revealed some things in His text to me here about the life of one of the individuals here in Matthew. So Genesis chapter 12 for y'all. I'm in Matthew chapter number 1. When you find your place, say amen. All right, good. I wanted to make sure y'all was getting there. All right, so let me read mine. Matthew chapter 1, verse number 1. The book of the generation of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. Verse 2, Abraham begat Isaac, and Isaac begat Jacob, and Jacob begat Judah and his brethren. I want to preach specifically today on Abraham. Abraham. That's why I've got you in Genesis and I'm in Matthew. It's not to mess with you. I'm going to be there in just a minute. But as I was going to study through the book of Matthew here, I find it very curious the individuals that the Lord has placed in the text there. I understand that they are all in the lineage, the family tree of Jesus. I get that. I absolutely do. But He goes through the trouble of giving us all of these names. And I made a decision a while back that when I was studying my Bible and I got to one of these he begat things that everybody wants to just skip, I don't want to just skip. I want to try to do my due diligence here to look at it and study it and see a little something about this individual. So if we're going to understand the lineage of Christ and all these men and ladies that it lists here, I believe there's some things that we can learn from a lot of these individuals. Now, as I got to the name of Abraham, something jumped out in my mind and I couldn't shake it, so that's the idea for the message this morning, is what was Abraham so known for? I understand that we say Abraham and everybody else goes Abraham and Isaac. Abraham and Isaac. Abraham and Sarah, his wife, Isaac, his son. That's the story everybody knows. We talk about Abraham all the time. We talk about him being Father Abraham. Father Abraham had many sons, sing the little song, all of that. But the thing that jumps in my mind when I hear the name Abraham that could describe him, a title I could give him, is Abraham's blind faith. Abraham had a whole lot of blind faith. It's easy to have faith when time and time again. You see, the children of Israel, all the Jews, they can have faith because they've seen Abraham's faith and they had that to build off of. Me, I can have faith because I've seen my parents' faith and I can build off of that faith. When I was in high school, my senior year, I took a class called Pre-Calculus Intro to Engineering. And we took that class, and in Intro to Engineering, they had a cardboard chair challenge. The teacher brought a whole bunch of cardboard in there, and she said, I want you to take this cardboard and make a chair, and to pass the test, it has to be able to hold up a full-grown student. So I'm sitting here trying to find the smallest person in the class I can because I want them on my team so that I have an advantage when it comes to that. And, of course, I ended up with the big guys. I ended up with the big ones. I'm like, you ain't sitting in that chair because I'm 100 pounds lighter than you. We're going to go with me instead. But as we built that chair there, we had hot glue and cardboard. Make a chair. So I'm sitting here, we built our chair up, and I had some great ideas, I thought. But I'm building my little chair, and I get it set up, and it comes time for the test. And the chair has been sitting all night. We come in the next day to take the little test, and I go to sit in that thing. You want to talk about easing into a chair. I grabbed a hold of the wall. I had somebody hold my arm, helping me ease down. I looked like I'd been bedridden for 6 years when they finally got me down in that thing. But I finally got in that chair, and I leaned back, and when I realized it was going to hold me, I went, whoo, I passed that test. It'll hold me. So then we had to see just how much it will hold. So then somebody got in my lap, and somebody got in their lap, and we held about 2.5, maybe 3 kids before it finally went down with us. But I tell you that story to tell you this. Nobody had sat in that chair yet, so I didn't have any faith in the chair. But after I sat in the chair, everybody else saw it and said, hey, that chair holds him, it'll hold me too. Why is Abraham's faith so important? You can't have faith because you see somebody else with faith, and now all of a sudden, hey, I can have faith there because Abraham had faith and it worked for him. Children can have faith because they see their parents living in faith. Daddy tells the story. He used to be an Ole Miss baseball player. He went from there to the Cincinnati Reds organization. Got hurt in rookie balls, so he didn't make it all the way up. But he got his name in the industry, so he began to do scouting for the MLBs. He scouted for Tampa Bay Rays. Back then it was the Tampa Bay Devil Rays. Now I think it's just the Rays or something. I don't know what they are anymore. But he used to scout for them, and he would do camps and things like that for them. And money got tight around the house. They were short. They had a repair bill that came up, and they needed like $300 to do it. He goes and he does this camp, comes back, they mail him the check. Guess what the check was for? $300. It's exactly what he needed. Guess what? He had faith to keep paying his tithes and trust God to provide the difference there, and God stepped in and did it. So because of the faith in that situation, I can have faith in my life to know what needs to happen, and I can't even begin to tell you all the times that money's got tight around the house, and we've gotten a letter back that says we overpaid on our house mortgage or something like that. I don't even know how you do that, but we get a letter and a check, and the check would be exactly what we needed. Papa got a credit distribution check one time for $447 and some change. Guess what had just happened? The brakes had just gone out in his truck and damaged a bunch of stuff, and the bill was $447 and some change. He ended up with like an extra 2 quarters off of that. That's God stepping in. That's faith that you have. And now because of all of the demonstration of faith that I have seen, I can have faith in God as well. I can have faith in what he's done. So by Abraham leading the way by faith, all of those that are now looking at Abraham have an example to look at. They have a proof there. They have seen that. They know that prayer works. They know that God works. They know that that faith works. So Abraham and his blind faith. I told you to go to Genesis 12. Let me read it real quick. I'm going to read just a quick portion of it. Verse number 1 here, and talk about the first bit of his blind faith. Genesis 12:1 says this, Now the Lord had said unto Abram, he ain't got his ham yet, he's just Abram, Get thee out of thy country and from thy kindred and from thy father's house unto a land that I will show thee. There's a lot of thys in there. Did you notice that? I tried to emphasize that as I read it. He says, get out of thy country, thy kindred, thy father's house. To demonstrate some faith here in this situation, if I could put it this way, he had to leave the farm. He left that country. He left what he thought he was supposed to be doing. This is Abram's plan here, okay? It wasn't his idea to leave Ur of the Chaldees. His daddy done that. You don't believe me? Well, read back 2 verses. Verse 31 and verse number 32 there of Genesis chapter 11 talks about Abram's daddy and how that he's the one that started to get them out of Ur of the Chaldees. So it wasn't just Abraham's idea, but now his daddy Terah is gone off the scene. He is dead and gone, and now it falls to Abraham. So Abraham jumps up by faith, and God tells him to do something. And the first thing he says is, hey, that country you're living in where you think you're supposed to be, I want you to leave it. I want you to get out of that. And I said he's got to leave the farm. He tells him to get out of something that belongs to him. Somewhere that he thought he belonged. Somewhere that he thought he ought to set up his life. Something that he thought he ought to be doing. And let God instead direct his path. You want to know what is crippling Christians in this day and time when it comes to faith? It's not that they don't know what God has for them to do. It's that God has told them what they want to do and what they ought to do. And they don't want to do it. He has told them, I need you to leave this. And they won't leave that. He's told them, I need you to get away from that, and they won't get away from that. He's told them that plan that you have for your life is exactly that. It's your plan. I don't need you on your plan. I need you on my plan. Abram here, he's 75 years old here in a moment in chapter number 12. I would say I understand that his daddy lived to 205. I get that. But he's nearly halfway through his life. He's probably in his mid to late 30s if we were to equate it to today's time. He's done jumping around. Most time, by the time that you're in your 30s, late 30s, you're settled in your job, you're settled in your home, you're settled in your family. You kind of have some things figured out. You're not looking to get up and move and go somewhere else. You're not looking to start a new career there. I've worked with several guys that have been close to that age, and they'll tell you over and over again, man, I wish I'd have picked something earlier because now I'm going to have to work till I'm 70 to get retirement. They wanted to get in and work. They want to get somewhere and be settled. I believe a lot of times our Christian life, we have an idea of where we're supposed to be. We get settled in. We're happy. We like what we're doing. But when we ask God about it, God says no. And instead of us going with His plan and getting out of that country and getting off of the family farm and getting off of what we think is for us, we say no. And then we want to pray and cry out later on down the line and say, God, why ain't you blessing me? God, why ain't you using me? Well, I tried to tell you where to go. That'd be like if the quarterback comes into the huddle. Nobody huddles anymore. But if the quarterback came into the huddle and he looked at his star receiver and said, look, I need you to run a post, okay? I need you to go up the sideline like 20 yards. I need you to cut towards the goal post. I need you to run a post route. That's what I need from you. And when the quarterback drops back and he's looking for that guy running the post, and he decided instead of running the post, he's going to run a go route straight down the sideline, he's not where the quarterback wanted him to be. And guess what? The quarterback don't throw the ball. And when the receiver gets mad because the ball didn't come to him, the quarterback can say, I needed you to run a post because that's where the route was supposed to go. You didn't get the ball. You didn't score the touchdown because you didn't take the route I told you to take. I wonder how many times God has looked at us and says, I've got a touchdown ready for you, but you won't follow the route I gave you because you thought your route was better. Anybody ever tried to race Siri before? Anybody ever got in their vehicle, typed in where we're going to get to do this? Siri pops up. Some of you guys use Google Maps instead of Siri. Some of you use Waze, whatever. I don't care. But the little line pops up on there, says go this way, and all the men do this, and I know it because I'm one of them. Oh, she don't know what she's talking about. We're going to go this way. I know how to get there. Yeah, you ask Billy Montgomery how that works when he's trying to get to the dump. If you was here yesterday, you know what I'm talking about. We gave them the easiest job. I'm going to leave some of them out. I ain't going to pick on them. I'm just going to pick on Billy. I've been on him all day today. He's going to get it again. Now, some of them guys who were with them, they didn't know where they were going. He's like, I went with them to tell them where to go. They leave out at like 8:45, 9 o'clock, and we don't see them till lunch. It don't take that long to get there. Now, they had to go on a wild goose chase because Brother Bob Chisholm gave us that truck and that trailer and everything, but he didn't get the truck and the trailer here. I'm picking on him too. That'll be just fine. He didn't get it here, and then when he did get it here, he was really smart. You know why? Because he didn't put no diesel in the truck, so we had to stop and put diesel in it for him. Smartest guy here for the cleanup day, he left with a tank of gas. I don't know how that works out. But no, they were looking, saying, oh, we know how to get there, but then they got turned around some kind of way, and guess what? They made a mess of things. I'm picking on them. It wasn't that big of a deal. It all worked out. But they made a mess of that route. It took them longer than they thought. They got turned around. They finally got there, and when they got to that place, they said, man, we should have just gone the way Siri told us to go. I wonder in our life if we feel like we've been wandering around all over the place. We bounced from this job to that job to this job to that house to this person to that person. We've done all this stuff trying to fill our way through life. And we look up on down the road and we're saying, man, I'm where God wants me to be now, but it took me 20 years to get here. If I'd have just done it from the get-go, I'd have been here right out of high school. I know nobody in here has had a life like that. I know nobody in here has bounced around because they didn't know what they're supposed to do. Isn't that just the best question ever? It's graduation time. You really want to mess with some kids? Go up to them and say, so what are you going to do after school? There's going to be a few that have an idea what they want to do, but most of them are going to look at you and go, I don't know. You can go to school? You can go to college? Where you going to work? I don't know. They don't know. They don't have a clue what they're going to do. They don't know what they're supposed to be doing. They don't know what job they want to do. A bunch of us in here, the job we ended up doing for the rest of our life is probably not what we thought we was going to start out doing. It's probably not what we thought. I told y'all I got called to preach when I was a sophomore in engineering school over at ICC Fulton. It wasn't in the game plan. It wasn't. But God called me, so I went, and here we are, okay? I'm trying to follow God's line for my life, not my own line. Abraham here, if he's going to be in the will of God, he's going to get to Canaan. He's going to get where God has him to be. He's going to get the great nation that's been promised unto him. He's going to get it, but he's going to get it because he follows God's will for his life, not staying on the farm where he thought he was supposed to be. I don't know this morning what God's telling you to do. I'm not saying that he's telling you to pack up your bags and go live in Oregon or something like that, but he might be telling you this morning that he's got a plan for you, and until you get on that plan, you can't go nowhere. Anybody ever been to an amusement park? I remember when Liberty Land was still going, we used to go over there all the time during the summer. You get on that ride there, and I don't care how adamant you are about it, that roller coaster will not start until what? Everybody is buckled in. You ever seen them? You get on that roller coaster and you get on that thing and you got your stuff on and you're locked and you're ready to go, but then they won't go. You're like, my goodness, what is taking so long? And you look up and some goofball don't know how to work a seatbelt. And it's taking everybody off the ride. Everybody's taking forever now. We can't have no fun. We can't go because we're not buckled in ready like we're supposed to be. God has got a thrill ride ahead of us in this thing called life, but sadly a lot of us are sitting there wondering why we can't get going, and He's saying, I need you to buckle up and get going. But we won't do it. We won't do what He tells us to do to get off the finish line. When they have a race, ladies and gentlemen, start your engines. You need to crank up and get ready to go. When they wave that flag and everybody else is leaving and you just sitting there, don't look around like, oh, what happened? You didn't crank up. You didn't go. You didn't press the gas. You didn't steer the wheel. You didn't do this. Abraham here, the reason that he is blessed of God is not just because Abraham got lucky and drew the winning number. It's because God told him to do something and he went. He went where God told him to go, when God told him to go there. He said, leave the farm. Leave your plan. Leave where you think you belong. He says, get out of thy country. That thy right there is the problem. He said, I need you to get off of this thy stuff and get on the my stuff. Get off of your stuff and get on God's stuff. Get on His plan. I promise you things will work out better for you. Is it going to be scary? Absolutely. It's going to be terrified. There's going to be times when God tells you to do something and you're going to look at Him and be like, it don't work. I can't do it. But if you will and you'll jump, guess what? It'll be fun. It'll be real fun. I remember we used to go to Smith Lake some. During the summers, we'd go and we'd stay for a couple days with some family friends of ours. And there's a big old rock there at Smith Lake. I'm going to mess the name up. It's been so long. Prudential Rock or something like that. Some of y'all might know what I'm talking about. But anyways, big old rock, like 40 foot, something like that. And they were talking about going up there and jumping. I remember I got on that thing. And I climbed up. And there's a rope to help you up. And you get up there. When you're looking at it from the water, it looks high. When you look down, it looks really high. And when you jump, it looks even higher if that's possible. But I got up there, and I said, man, I done climbed up all this way. I'm not going to get picked on and made fun of if I get scared and walk back down. So I got to jump while I'm here. So either I was going to sit there on that rock, and I was going to stare at it, or I was going to man up, and I was going to jump. And guess what? When I jumped, I was scared to death, but when I hit the water, I was giggling because it was so fun. That's the same way when it comes to serving God. Sometimes we're sitting at the top of that dude. God's saying, jump into my will, jump into my plan for you, and you're scared to death. And when you finally jump, by the time you hit the ground running in that thing, you're giggling because you're having such a good time. I do not regret the call to preach one bit. It's been the best years of my life. Have I had heartaches? Have I had fears? Have I had hard times? Yeah, absolutely. But I don't regret none of it because I'm having the time of my life. I mean, look at me. I've got 70, 85 folks coming out here to listen to me scream at them. That's great. That's awesome. That's not the only reason I'm doing it, okay? Take a joke. It'll be all right. But no, I'm having a big old time. Because sometimes the services are like this and there's people here and it's good. But I have been in services where I preached to more of my family than people in the church. I went one place and I had 4 people with me and there was only 3 in the church. In the middle of me preaching, one of them got up from this side, went over to that side, and sat down and had a full-on conversation with somebody. I'm like, dear God, I guess I'm just like background noise or something. This is a radio station. But at that point in time, the service was about over, and I'll be honest with you, I was ready to be done and leave and not go back. That's mean, Brother Easton. That's truthful. Sorry about it. Hey, some churches I don't care to go to no more. There's a reason I want to go to a church that's alive. There's a reason I want to go to a church that's alive. What's that Brother Doug said? A church that's alive is worth the drive. Get somewhere where people are excited about serving God and getting in His will, and you'd be surprised what a good time you'd have on the way. Nobody wants to get in a vehicle with somebody on a road trip and they start griping and complaining before you out of the driveway. But if you get in that road trip and they done cut the tunes on and we singing and we having a big old time, it's pretty good, ain't it? I was messing with Brother Doug at first mission trip we went on. You got to understand, we left out like 5 in the morning. And we're going to be driving all the way to Sioux Falls, South Dakota. We left at 5. We got there like 9 o'clock at night, okay? That's a long time in a vehicle. A long time. 15-passenger church, man, we had 13 folks in it. It's pretty tight. I was riding shotgun. Brother Doug was driving. I sat down in that seat, and I just had to mess with him. So I sit down. We ain't even made it to the end of the road yet to get out on 30, and I said, 99 bottles of pop on the wall, 99 bottles of pop. And he looked at me and said, no, we're not doing it. We can't do it. So then I waited till we made it to I-22. We shouldn't get on there. And I looked at him and said, are we there yet? He said, we ain't doing this the whole way. We ain't doing it. No, I had a lot of fun on the trip because I was going to be on that thing, and I'm going to enjoy the ride. I don't know why Christians got on this thing, and they act miserable to be there. You said yes. You said yes to salvation. You said yes to getting in this thing with Him. Have some joy. Have some excitement. Get in on that thing and have fun while you're here. We got here and we cleaned up I got here at 8 o'clock and they's already cleaning up. And Chris looked at me and said, if you're on time, you're late. Fair enough. But they was cleaning up, and we started before 8 o'clock, and we left the church at like 1:20 yesterday, and guess what we did the whole time we was cleaning up? We were laughing, and we were joking, and we were having a good time, and we're picking on each other and all of that. Guess what? We was laboring. We were sweating. Half them folks couldn't get out of bed this morning because they was sore and tired. I might have been one of them. I was 40 minutes late this morning from what I wanted to be. Got here at 6:40 for Brotherhood. I meant to be here at 6 to help cook, and it didn't happen. But no, we might have been tired, we might have been working, we might have been laboring. That's Christian life there, but we can have fun while we're doing it. Well, I don't know where all that's coming from, but okay. So we have to leave the farm and get off of our plan and get on God's plan. But the next thing he says there, I need you to leave from thy kindred. Get out from thy kindred. You know what he wants us to do? He wants to leave the familiar. Leave the familiar. You know what kindred is? You ever heard that term, we're kindred spirits? What's that mean? It means we get along. It means we're alike. It's His kindred. It's His family. It's things that are familiar to Him. God loves for us to get out of our comfort zone. He wants us to get up and do something for Him. Is anybody in here comfortable with standing up and preaching a devotion? I see no hands. Guess what? I ain't comfortable with this either. I'm just loud and moving around enough so you can't see my knees shaking. That way y'all don't know how nervous I am up here. But I'm trying to tell you something. Get up and do something for God that is special to Him. Get uncomfortable and let God do something big in your life. Get out of the kindred. Get out of the comfort zone. We can't get where God's trying to get us because it's uncomfortable on the way. Anybody ever had a physical injury and they tell you to go to physical therapy to fix it? Anybody have fun on that first trip to physical therapy? Anybody enjoy that a whole lot? Brother Doug, I guess it's just his day today. He's had a double knee replacement. When I say double, I mean on the same leg because the first one went bad. He had his knee replaced. It didn't do right. He went back the next year, almost to the day. Went in there and they scoped the knee. They removed scar tissue and everything. Said it still wasn't right. He went back a year after that. On the second year anniversary for his original knee replacement, he got it replaced again. He's been through a lot of physical therapy. They'd put him on that table and he'd be laying on his belly and they'd put a rope around his ankle. And they'd pull that thing up like this over top of his head. Look, I can't move like that still. But no, they'd pull that thing up over top of his head and he'd take that rope and he'd pull it. And he'd say he'd sit there and he'd grit his teeth. He'd be like, because it hurt so bad. It was uncomfortable. But guess what? Now he can walk. Now that knee moves like it's supposed to. And now he don't have the pain that was in there because it's been replaced. It was uncomfortable in physical therapy, but when you work through that pain, you work through that anguish, you work through that misery there, guess what? All of a sudden you're uncomfortable, but now things are better. Now things are great. Now things are wonderful. Shots are not comfortable. But when you go and you get a shot at the doctor, guess what? All of a sudden you feel better. Stitches are not comfortable. But if you got a gaping wound bleeding and you get stitches and it heals up, guess what? Now all of a sudden we're glad we got stitches. Getting in the will of God sometimes is uncomfortable. Doing things for God is uncomfortable sometimes, but if you'll get in and get a part of it, you'll be surprised what God will do with you. Get uncomfortable. Here's my plug for the choir again. Get in the choir. It's uncomfortable, but I'm telling you, if you'll get up there and give it a little bit, you'll start to love it. You'll be excited about that thing, and you'll enjoy doing that. Give somebody a tract one day. Invite a stranger to church. Give a devotion. Fill in for a Sunday school class. Do a brotherhood meeting sometime. Let me ask you this. I do this to the youth all the time over at Locust Grove. I used to ask them periodically, if something happened to me right now, could one of y'all stand up and give a lesson on Wednesday night? And they'd look at me, And one of them said they could, and I gave them the opportunity, and it didn't go so hot. There's something to be said for being humble about the whole deal. But no, we're getting to that point in time where we're losing people that can do some things, not because the talent's not there, but because they're uncomfortable doing it, and they won't fight through their uncomfort. I had to take public speaking in school. You wouldn't see it now. But I was a nerd. Sue will tell you I still am a nerd. I was a geek. I was reading books. Man, 5th grade, I wore carpenter pants. I would take books with me. I mean, I'm reading 700-page books in 5th grade. I loved it. I really did. I was a nerd. I still am. I love facts like that, all kind of useless knowledge. I got every bit of that. I love it. It's great. But no, in the middle of all that, and I can't remember where I was going with that, so I'm rambling now trying to remember what I was going to say about that. But getting uncomfortable about public speaking, that was it. I was a nerd. I didn't want to talk in front of nobody. I didn't want nothing to do with that. I wanted to just get done with it as quick as I possibly could. And I knew I had to take it for my curriculum, and Mom said, do you want to wait until you go to Ole Miss, or do you want to take it at ICC in Fulton first? I said, ICC, because the class is going to be a lot smaller, and I ain't going to know none of them folks from Fulton. And when I get done with that class, I can just take all that embarrassment, I can put it way back there, and I can forget that it ever happened. So I got in there, and I did my first speech, and I had to do an introductory speech for another kid in the class there. You talking about embarrassed. You talking about making a mess of things. Man, it was awful. I was so nervous. I was so worried. When I first got up to preach, I was nervous as I could be. When I was growing up at Herkin, I had to do a devotion one time. I mean, I'm little bitty. I'm like 8, 9 years old. Trey, I don't know if you remember this or not. But I got up and I did a devotion before Sunday school because the guy was out of town. And I remember I was talking about the parable of the lost coin, and I had seen somebody at a ball game that had dropped a penny on the ground, and they said, sir, you dropped a penny. And he looked in and said, oh, it's just a penny. And I said, I sure am glad that God's not like that man to look at me laying on the ground and say, oh, it's just him. Oh, it's just him. So I did my little devotion, and the whole time I'm gripping that thing, I'm like about to pass out. And I called on somebody to pray, and while they were praying, I ran out of the pulpit, went to the Sunday school room and cried because I was so nervous. It tore me up. I couldn't stand it. It was uncomfortable. But now I've done it for a while, and I've got myself to where I'm comfortable being uncomfortable, if that makes sense. I've gotten to the point to where you can fake it till you make it. You get in and you do it and you get used to it, and all of a sudden it doesn't affect you as much. So you might be sitting here wanting to do something for God, but what He's asking you to do, the opportunity that He's given you might be getting in the choir. It might be teaching Sunday school. It might be filling in on a Wednesday night for me if I'm not here. By the way, some of you deacons, get ready because I'm going to use y'all for this. I think that's good. We all ought to be able to stand up and give a lesson and tell somebody about the Lord. So if I'm not here on a Wednesday night and I don't have time to get a preacher lined up, it's going to be one of y'all. There's been times that Brother Doug has called me literally 45 minutes before service and said, I've got an awful migraine headache. I can't do it. You got it today. And I'm like, well, I'm glad I got something, I guess. We'll see how it goes. But no, we ought to be ready to get out of our comfort zone and do something for God, because that's how He's going to use us. That's how He's going to advance us. That's how Abraham built his faith. He got out away from all those people he could depend on, and then he had to depend on God. And God stepped in and filled the gaps. Me and Sue, we've done 2 sessions of premarital counseling now. And the little thing that we use, one of the pages in there talks about isolation from in-laws creates dependency on your spouse. And what it's talking about, one of the problems in the early marriage is when 2 people get married, the guy says that's not how mama did it, and the wife says that's not how my daddy did it, and now all of a sudden you act like you married their family and not them. What that little note is saying here is you've got to get away from those things and learn to live together. To isolate from that, to learn to live with that spouse of yours. I would say what God is doing with Abraham right here is He's getting him out of those familiar people to him and the things that he's always depended on, so that he would have to depend on God. And guess what? God was there with open arms, ready when He needed Him. It might be that you're uncomfortable this morning with doing anything for God. If you're uncomfortable doing it, then I hope you're comfortable where you're at, because you won't go nowhere. You've got to get to the point where you can step up and you can do something for God, even if it's uncomfortable. But not only did he have to leave the familiar there, but he had to leave the family as well. It says, get thee out of thy country, get thee out of thy kindred, and then from thy father's house there, unto a land that I will show thee. Why does he need to get away from his family? I'll tell you why he needs to get away from his family. Because everybody's family has their idea of what you're supposed to do. Every family has that. People used to ask me all the time. My papa was a teacher. My mama worked in the Votech. My daddy was a teacher. My mama was a teacher. My older brother is a teacher. And they look at me and say, what are you going to teach? I said, nothing. I don't want to be a teacher. Because I've listened to them complain about all them goofball kids. And yeah, y'all the parents of them goofball kids, by the way. I will be too, so y'all can pick on me later when the time comes, all right? But no, I've heard them complain about that thing, and I said, I want nothing to do with it, so I decided to pastor a church, I guess. That just fixed it all. No, that's not what. I went to engineering school because I didn't want to do what they had told me was going to end up happening. They said, you're going to be a teacher just like all of us. That's the picture that they had for me, and I said, I'm not doing it. I'm going to be an engineer. And then God said, guess what? You're going to be a preacher. You're going to be a pastor. Guess what that means? You get to teach some more. You're going to do that now. So God does have a sense of humor. But they all have a picture of what we're supposed to do. And most of the time, their picture for us does not line up with God's picture for us. Can I use this point here? And y'all just take this with a grain of salt, okay? The night that I surrendered to preach, we were out at Martin Baptist Church there on Martintown Road out in Union County over there. We had a revival meeting, and things had just been going great. It was just a great meeting. That's Sue's church that she grew up at. I was there for the girl. I could care less about the church, honestly, that day. But I went with her because I wanted her to be happy with me. I went down there, and we had an hour and a half invitation. Hour and a half. I stood up. Y'all think we make y'all stand a lot to sing around here. We stood up for an hour and a half for invitation over and over and over again. And I'm sitting there gripping that pew thinking, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. And then finally, the Lord nudged me hard enough, and I went down there and I surrendered my life to Him. And I got done, and I was on top of the world, man. I just give my life to the ministry. I just accepted the call to preach in my life, and I went home. And this is where it gets sad. My daddy was asleep in the bed. And I know he didn't react right. He was asleep. I woke him up. It was a shock. I went up to him, and I shook him. And he turned and looked at me. I said, Daddy, I surrendered to preach tonight. He looked at me and said, you can't do that. You can't do that. Here I am thinking that my dad's going to be so excited for me. He's going to be jumping up and down. He's going to be my number one fan, and he is now. But he's going to be my number one fan. That's what I wanted. That's the reason I woke him up to tell him and didn't wait till the next day. And he said, you can't do that. And I said, well, I am anyways. I got in the truck and I went to Hurricane to talk to my pastor, Brother Brock, at the time, and I told him everything that was going on. Told him I was trying to preach, and Daddy pulled in the driveway, and he come in there and he apologized for how they reacted. He said, son, I acted that way because I was scared. He said, because that's not what I saw for you. He said, I'm worried what God's going to do. I've heard the horror stories how churches treat their pastors. I've heard about the missionaries. If you get called overseas, we're not going to see you no more. We're not going to ever see the grandkids if you have some. We're not going to get to have you for Christmas. We're going to be worried about you all the time over there. He was speaking out of a place of fear because his picture for me did not line up with God's picture for me. And because of that, it made things hard for me at first. It might be that the family that you're trying to hold on to, and I'm not trying to tell you to get away from your family. Please don't take that way, okay? What I am telling you is this. You cannot let any man, I don't care if it is your daddy, you can't let any woman, if it's your mama, you can't let anybody tell you what God has for your life. Because God does not call your pastor and say, hey, you tell Brother Johnny he's supposed to sing this song every single day. He tells that to Brother Johnny. He doesn't call me and say, hey, that Jake Murphy's going to be a preacher one day. You need to let him know that. He ain't told me that, so you're in the clear right now, buddy. But if he tells you that, that's on you. No, he didn't come to somebody else and tell me that I was supposed to surrender to preach and tell them to come by and play messenger and let me know. He doesn't give the will for my life to somebody else and then bring it to me. He gives it to me. I pray, I seek His will, and He directs my path. That being said, when I was hugging necks after I surrendered to preach and told the folks at Hurricane, little old lady looked at me and said, I knew you was going to be a preacher. I'm like, well, I wish you'd have told me to save some heartache if I'd have known it. But no, He doesn't tell everybody else that. He tells us what His plan for our life is. Now, we might can see some things pointing to that. We might see the touch of God on somebody, something like that. But at the end of the day, I don't know what God's will is for your life aside from learning and knowing about His Son and being saved by the grace of God. That's all I know. I don't know the next step that God has for you. But I do know that He's calling you to do some things. It might not be preach. It might not be a missionary. It might not teach Sunday school. It might not be a deacon. It might not be this. But every single one of us was left here for a reason. If we weren't, then why did God not just take us straight on to heaven when we got saved? Why leave us here? Why leave us here to suffer persecution? Why leave us here to suffer the fiery trials, as Paul calls them? Why would He leave us here for that? He left us here to fulfill the Great Commission. Abide till He comes. Bring others unto Him. Go and tell the world about Him. He left us here for a purpose. And He's got a whole grand plan ahead of us if we'll just go. If we'll just go. We all talk about Abraham and the promise of being a great nation. Ladies, y'all come on. That's just point 1 out of 4, but I think we'll stop there. I don't think y'all want to stay here that long. But if y'all come on this morning, I want to tell you this real quick. We talk about Abraham and his blind faith. We talk about Isaac. We talk about all the things involved with Abraham. But he got this promise of being a great nation not before he left. He didn't get it. You see, in verse number 1, God tells Abraham, I need you to leave your country. I need you to leave your kindred. I need you to leave your father's house. I need you to leave all of that and get on board with me. And then when Abraham goes and he does that, verse 4 says Abraham departed as the Lord had spoken unto him. Then go on down to verse number 7 and see what it says. And the Lord appeared unto Abram and said, Unto thy seed will I give this land. And there builded he an altar unto the Lord who appeared unto him. You know when he got the promise that he was going to get that land? It wasn't before he ever left. It was after he done what God told him to do. So it might just be that you're sitting here this morning and God has something for you to do. And you will not do it. And you're refusing to do that. Whether it's out of a sense of fear, or you're uncomfortable, or you don't have the faith to do it, or you just plumb don't want to do it. And if you're in that boat, then I'm going to pray for you, because that's just wicked to be so against what God has for you. I don't know why. I don't know what He said to do. I don't know why you ain't going. But I can tell you this right now. If you want that promise at the end of this thing, you ain't going to get it till you go. You're not going to get your summer bod until you quit eating cake and start working out. You're not going to get the blessings of God. You're not going to get the things that He has for you until you step up to the plate and do what He has for you. Let's all stand this morning, ladies. You play when you're ready.